That's good. Please welcome Russ Locke.
Hi, good evening. So, happy birthday, Steve Goodman. This is going to be a fun evening. We have quite a few people involved. Lots of people that knew him pretty well. And we actually have the authority on Steve Goodman here tonight. But we'll get into that in a minute. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. With the apples and plums, I got 2 good hands and 1 rule of thumb. You're going to East St. Louis. Don't you drink too much. Cut down that consumption. You shake your leg and such inside. There's my gal on the other side. I'm in Davenport, that's in Iowa. She's in East Moline, Illinois, with the Rock Island line and the Mississippi in between. Come on, baby, don't canal street me if you're going to East St. Louis. Don't you drink too much. Cut down that consumption. You shake your leg and I say cut down that consumption. You shake your leg and I say cut down that consumption. You shake your leg and such inside. Thank you. This is such a dream evening. We get to do all Steve Goodman songs. I got to meet him in about 70, I don't know, 5 or 6 at the Troubadour because of Matt Kramer invited me. I was there to see Maria Muldaur, and Matt saw me and he says, "Come on upstairs, there's somebody I want you to meet." And I went upstairs, and here's this short little guy, and he shakes my hand with this vice grip, Jesus. And I said, "Who is this?" And then I got to go downstairs and watch him from about this far away. And I've been an incredible fan ever since. About, I don't know, 4 or 5 months after that, I got to see he and John Prine at Santa Monica Civic.
And Russ dragged me down there. He said, "You got to come to this concert." And I'm like, "No, I'm kind of in love, doing the girlfriend." So I went with him, and it was just great seeing Steve Goodman and the energy that he had on stage. And then John Prine came out and joined him, and it was beautiful.
He's got some amazing songs, and we've got quite a few people here tonight, and we'll get to that. All of who know him and love him and do a couple of his songs each. And it's just like real life. Let's see what I did there. There she goes. How could she leave me? Doesn't she need me? She was never really there. Feels so cold. Oh, what a shame now. There's no one to blame now. It's the world that isn't fair. In real life, people say one thing and then they'll do another. In real life, they'll break the tender heart of an innocent lover now and then. No big surprise. It happens all the time in real life. In my dream, she stands in the moonlight. She looks into my eyes and tells me she will stay one more night. Spend it together, pretend it's forever, but it never works that way. In real life, people say one thing and then they'll do another. In real life, they'll break the tender heart of an innocent lover now and then. No big surprise. It happens all the time in real life. Why can't I learn my lesson? I must be a little bit slow. Why must I always be the first to cry and the last to know? It happens all the time in real life.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm Russ Locke. This is Bob Locke. We're the Locke brothers. These are our friends. Ray Sabo on guitar.
Right.
Ed Tree on guitar. Honorary Locke brother. Tracy McMahon on the drums. Dennis Van Dyke on bass. And let us know if the show's getting too slick for you. We have an outline here. We might not follow. It was all that I could do to keep from crying.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems so useless to remain. You're the one who always tried to change me, and that is why I'll always stay the same. Now you don't have to call me Freddie Fender. And you don't have to call me Charlie Ride. And you don't have to call me Pearl Hanging anymore. Even though you're on my fighting side, well, I'll hang around as long as you will let me. I never mind standing in the rain. You don't have to
call me darling, darling, but she never even called me by my name. Well, I've seen my name a few times in the phone book, and on that little sign out front where I play. But the only time I can see out here my name called Edward Tree is when Jesus finally has a judgment day. Well, I hang around as long as you will let me. I never mind standing in the rain. You don't have to call me darling, darling, but you never even call me by my name. Well, Steve Goodman and John Prine wrote this song in a New York City hotel room in 1971. And they figured they'd finish the song. Hello? And about a month later, after some closer inspection, Steve Goodman said, you know, we didn't write the perfect country and western songs, and we didn't say anything about trucks, or trains, or mama, or getting drunk, or going to prison. So Steve wrote a final verse of the song and sent it off to John, and they decided that it had been done. To go on. Well, I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison, and I went to pick her up in the pouring rain. But before I could get to the station in my pickup truck, she got run over by a damn old train. Well, I hang around as long as you will let me. I never mind standing in the rain. You don't have to call me darling, darling, but you never even call me. I wonder why you won't call me. You never even call me by my name. Thank you very much.
Okay, we got one more, and then we're going to invite some other folks. But this is a song that somebody else was going to do, but then they changed their mind. And we've always done this song, so.
You can sing along if you like.
You fed me on chicken and wine. It was steak and potatoes and lobster, and babe, I felt fine. Now you give me your seaweed and alfalfa sprouts and sunflower seeds, and I got my doubts. Babe, you left me here with those chicken cordon bleu. Well, my stomach's so empty, and all I got is food for thought. And I've been sitting here thinking about the 20 pounds of groceries we bought down at Whole Foods. We bought 10 pounds of brown rice and 5 more of beans, 5 pounds of granola, and you know what that means. I'm a regular fella, but I got that chicken cordon bleu.
I'll play me some of them non-factory.
babe, I can't stand no more. You know, this stuff is so weird that the cockroaches move next door. Babe, can you see that old dog? He's out in the street. He got a big smile on his face 'cause they let him eat meat. Babe, I got the lemon and chicken cordon. Babe, I got the lemon and chicken cordon. Babe, I got the lemon and the chicken cordon bleu.
Thank God for Steve Goodman.
We'd like to introduce Tom Hubbard, old friend, acquaintance from, we've figured out at least 15 years. We know each other from all the local open mics, all the songwriter showcases, but mostly from Kulak's in North Hollywood. And there you go.
Howdy, folks. I'm also the one who said I was interested in doing chicken cordon blues, and then I chickened out.
You cordon blues now?
Yeah, well, but here's one of my favorite Goodman pieces. Last night I stayed up late to watch the sunrise. It afforded a beautiful view. Counted sheep till I cried. Count the times you said goodbye. Oh, I can't sleep when I can't sleep with you. There's no reason to think you remember a love like some forgotten I owe you. Counted sheep till I cried. Count the times you said goodbye. Oh, I can't sleep when I can't sleep with you. Oh, babe, I'm so lonely. Don't know what I'm gonna do. All of my life I've been dreaming a sweet dream. How was I to know that dream was you? I stayed up late to watch the sunrise. Guess I'll stay up late tomorrow night too. I've been watching the dawn every night since you've been gone. Oh, I can't sleep when I can't sleep with you. Oh, babe, I'm so lonely. Don't know what I'm gonna do. You don't have to wake me when it's over. I just can't get over you. I stayed up late to watch the sunrise. Guess I'll stay up late tomorrow night too. Hear that early bird call. Ain't it hard when you fall? Oh, I can't sleep when I can't sleep with you. Hear that early bird call. Ain't it hard when you fall? Oh, I can't sleep when I can't sleep with you. Moving from the sublime to the ridiculous, I'd like to bring up my friend Robert Morgan Fisher to help me with this next one. I should issue a brief disclaimer. The last three, the triple tag at the end of this song is not by Steve Goodman. It is by your humble correspondent. We tune because we want you to think we care. applied. They told her she was qualified to be a secretary or a clerk. The word had gotten out on the day she was born, but she was 25 years getting the news. And the I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going nowhere in a hurry blues. My friend Fred went lucky last Tuesday. He took himself out to the track. He was armed with a hot tip and $100 bill, but that boy had to hitchhike back. The horse that he bet on was beaten all the way till he threw off one of his shoes and got the I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going nowhere in a hurry blues. And I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how long my journey will last. And I don't know where I'm going. The future's one big mirror of the past. Well, I've been losing so long that it looks just like winning. Kick me again and I'll come right back grinning. All of my life I've been standing still. It's the world that's moving around so fast. And it was on a Sunday morning 140 years ago. The message came without warning, though everybody told them so. The last thing General Custer said when he looked out at all of them Sioux was, I got the I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going nowhere in a hurry blues. And I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how long my journey will last. And I don't know where I'm going. The future's one big mirror of the past. Well, I've been losing so long that it looks just like winning. Kick me again, I'll just bounce right back grinning. All of my life I've been standing still. It's the world that's going around so fast. When our Cheeto and Cheat heard from Vladimir Putin an offer he could not refuse, he got the I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going nowhere in a hurry blues. When the judge gave Paul Manafort just what he wanted, a room with a different view. And the I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going nowhere in a hurry blues. And the stuff that the White House told us this morning, well, you know, some of that might not be true. We all got the I don't know where I'm going, but we're going nowhere in a hurry blues. Thank you.
Perry Barber, we have Perry Barber. She holds she's the one that came the farthest. She came all the way from New York, or someplace on the other coast. I don't know. I don't even know if there's such a place. East Coast, though, to be here tonight.
Florida.
Florida. Oh, well, that's just as far.
So my guitar is not electrifying, so I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, just like Steve liked it. He liked his old-fashioned girls.
Sounds better anyway.
And I am one of the people here who was very good friends with him. Very fortunate to have known him for 10 years. I met him in 1973, and I was playing in a bar in New York at the beginning of my musical career, and a guy walks into a bar. That's how I met Steve Goodman. He walked into a bar, introduced himself to me. He had been sent there by a friend of ours named Steve Berg, also a brilliant musician who played with Goodman. And Berg was always trying to set me up, but I think Goodman was already married, but he wanted us to connect musically. So Goodman walked in and he said, "Hi, Steve Berg told me that I should come and introduce myself. Do you mind if I play a couple of tunes?" Well, I was playing in a bar on the Upper East Side, opening for a guy named Chip Taylor. Wrote a song called Wild Thing and Angel of the Morning. Rock anthem, but he was a stone cold country guy. So anyway, I had this gig opening for him once a week. Goodman walks in and says, "Do you mind if I play a couple of songs?" And it was one of those nights where the audience just did not want to see little blonde me singing songs about, masturbation, self-flagellation, foot fetishism, voyeurism, and, dull stuff like that. So Goodman walks in, he says, "Do you mind if I play a couple of songs?" And I said, "Sure, be my guest." So this noisy bar on the Upper East Side, within 15 seconds of Goodman launching into like a nice little blues lick, and then My Funny Valentine, My Funny Valentine, that. And the audience was spellbound and silent within 15 seconds because his talent was so amazing. It was so phenomenal. He just exuded some kind of special gift. And it wasn't just his musical gift, it was his gift for connecting with people. And that's what appealed to me about him. He just wanted to extract every iota of vitality from every moment and every person that he ever encountered. But he didn't drain it away. He gave it back. He radiated it back 1,000 times. He was so special, and I can't thank you, the Locke brothers, and everybody here who's celebrating his 70th birthday. Amazing. At the same time, I have to tout the 75th birthday of the All-American Girls and the Rockford Peaches, the other Chicago team, Chicago area. So, Steve loved his baseball. I'm wearing Cubs blue in his honor.
All right.
So, anyway, nobody could write a drinking, lying, cheating song like Steve Goodman. And this is one of them, Looking for Trouble.
Oh,
spit and sputter, shiver and shudder, mumble and mutter, but the next one tastes so sweet, you wanna have another, and now you're drinking all the time. Don't go looking for trouble. Trouble will find you. Trouble will find you. Trouble will find you. Don't go looking for trouble. Trouble will find you. And it sure won't have to look very hard. The first time you shade the truth, you wanna run and hide. Your tongue gets tied. Your throat gets dried. Then you start trouble will find you. Trouble will find you. Don't go looking for trouble. Trouble will find you. And it sure to look very hard. Trouble will pin the tail on you and follow you around. It'll get you when your number's up. And when your guard is down. First time you fall in love, the skies are always sunny. He calls you honey. Your jokes are funny. Then he reminds you that he's only in it for the money. And now you're drinking all the time. Don't go looking for trouble. Trouble will find you. Trouble will find you. Deaf, dumb, and blind you. Don't go looking for trouble. No, no. Let me remind you that you sure want to look very hard. Trouble in your own backyard. Trouble in your own backyard. Trouble, trouble. Yes, he was a master craftsman at songwriting. And if you've ever seen a YouTube video of him performing, if you haven't, you should. He was amazing. I mean, Clay will probably tell you stories about how he would be playing a song with such enthusiasm that he'd break a string mid-song. He was the only performer I ever saw break a string mid-song, not break a beat. Keep playing, restring the guitar while he was playing, make up a couple of extra verses just for fun while he was playing the song, and never ever miss one single step in the song. He was brilliant. I mean, people with his talent come along so seldom, and that he was taken from us so soon is just really makes me glad that, 3-4 years later, that people are here remembering him. It's really important that his music is still played and loved the way it should be. And he also had a pretty wicked sense of humor, as well as being a romantic. Clay will tell you a story about Penny Evans, a song he wrote about a woman he met in a bar. Sense a pattern there. So, and I will sing it a cappella as he did, with an updated verse following in footsteps of the wonderful performer who preceded me. Thank you. So, Penny Evans. Oh, my name is Penny Evans, and my age is 21. A young widow from the war that's being fought in a far-off land. And I have 2 infant daughters, and I do the best I can. Now they say the war is over, but I think it's just begun. I remember I was 17 on the day I met young Bill. At his father's grand piano, we played good old Heart and Soul. And I only knew the left-hand part, and he the right so well. He's the only boy I've slept with, and the only boy I will. First we had a baby girl, then we had 2 good years. The next his 1A notice came, we parted without tears. Then it's 9 months from our last good night, our second babe appears. Then it's 10 months and a telegram confirming all our fears. And now every month I get a check from an army bureaucrat. And it's every month I tear it up and I mail a damn thing back. Do you think that makes it all right? Do you think I'd fall for that? You can keep your bloody money, sure won't bring my Billy back. I never cared for politics, speeches I don't understand. Likewise, never took no charity from any living man. But tonight, there's 50,000 lost in that unhappy land, and 50,000 heart and souls being played with just one hand. My name is Penny Evans, and I now am 64. And I had 2 loving daughters. I lost both of them to war. And I bless the lives they led. But I thank God I had no son. And they say the war is over, but I think it's just begun.
Perry Barber.
Goodman.
No, Perry Barber. Amazing. I'd forgotten that song. So we have here tonight the authority on Goodman. He's got little cards on all your tables. He's written the book. Oh, I have one. Look at that. I have one. It's this. Oh, geez. It's this big honking Bible. Yeah. Clay Eels, everybody. The author of the book Facing the Music. We're going to talk about baseball. We have books for sale. He has books for sale outside. Oh yes. By the way, this is a benefit tonight for the City of Hope Leukemia Research. Steve Goodman died of leukemia, and everything that we take in tonight is going to City of Hope in Steve Goodman's name.
Well, welcome everybody I got to tell you a couple of things about Perry, whom you just heard from. Can you give another round of applause for Perry for driving all the way out here today? What you may not know about Perry is that she is the #1 advocate and voting with her feet to get females to be professional baseball umpires. She's been umpiring since 1981, and Goodman actually saw some of the games that she umpired back at that time. I'm just so grateful. Perry is an example of the more than 1,100 people I interviewed for the book. It's an 8-year project, and I'm lucky I'm still married. My wife says, you better not do another. Another Goodman song comes to mind. People kept, when I was interviewing people, I would get to the end of an interview and they would never say just thanks and it would be done. They would say, well, you can't just talk to me. You've got to talk to X and Y and Z. And it's like door number 3. You've got to keep knocking on those doors and see what's there. And sometimes there was gold. Anyway.
Door number 3 was the song reference.
Door number 3. Any of you know that song?
Oh, yeah.
And the reason you know that song, in a lot of cases, you may not think you know Steve Goodman songs, but you do because they were recorded by other people. And door number 3 was a co-write with Jimmy Buffett, who, strangely enough, Buffett was a protege of Goodman's. He was sleeping on Goodman's couch when Goodman had a record contract, and he learned almost everything he knew about stagecraft from watching Goodman. And anyway, the two of them wrote that song together about the Monty Hall show, Let's Make a Deal.
What Jay's got on the tape.
That's right. And you should listen to both versions of it because Buffett does a little more crass ending to the song. Anyway, I've got to adjust the stand here.
What are you looking for?
I'm just looking for my book.
It's right there.
The book is 4 pounds. It's 800 pages. It's got 650 photographs. It's in updated 4th printing, if you can believe that. I'm just so thrilled. I mean, this was, why write the 50th book on Elvis, I mean, Goodman deserved a book. And once I got going on this, it just grew and grew and grew because,
Easy there.
because it needed to be done and I wanted to do it right, which meant doing it comprehensively. And I could go on at length about all kinds of things, but we're going to segue into a segment that Perry alluded to, which is Goodman's. At one point he said, I like music as much as I love baseball, and that's a hell of an admission. He was a baseball fan from when he was old enough to walk. He went to Cub games back when they didn't draw very well. He snuck into games. He would. He was obsessed with baseball, and if you think about it, baseball, there are 9 innings. Sometimes it goes extra innings, and there's a real. Baseball's full of metaphors, and certainly it's a metaphor for life and for death. And as Goodman became a songwriter, he always wanted to write a song about baseball, and particularly about the Cubs in Chicago. Because at that time the Cubs never won. They would never really. They would always be in the 2nd division of the National League. In fact, I want to read you a couple of quotes. One, these quotes come from, and I've got to say as an aside, thank goodness for all the people who stuck cassette recorders down by their seats during concerts, because Goodman talked a lot during shows, and a lot of the quotes come directly from his shows. But about the Cubs, he said, if you grew up in Chicago, you knew everything there was to know about pain by the time you were 10 years old. He says, that's why there aren't so many psychiatrists in Chicago, because we have the Cubs. He says, if you can learn to forgive your parents and the Cubs, you can save yourself $25,000. And probably today it would be even more. And he kept trying and trying to write a baseball song. Just never quite got it right for quite a while. Perry came out here from Florida, and there was a club down in South Miami called Bubba's. And I have several tapes from those shows that he did in the fall of 1973. And during one of them, he's talking about how he had been trying to write a baseball song for 4 years. And he says, I get about 3/4 of the way through it, and then I walk somebody and take myself out. I never get to finish the damn thing. It's true, I get about 3/4 of the way through it, and then I'm struggling, and it's a hot afternoon, and I'm looking to the bench, and the manager comes out and yanks me. I get pinch hit for all the time. Well, he did fitfully keep playing with this theme as he produced record after record after record, and some of you may know from a live CD that was released not too long ago that he did an improvised song called When the Cubs Go Marching In from the stage of the Earl of Old Town. And then in 1980, the year that he moved out here, by the way, he moved to Seal Beach. He lived here for the last 4 years of his life. The Chicago local TV station wanted to do a 1-hour special on Dave Kingman, who was a big home run hitter for the Cubs then. And so he wrote a song about Kingman, and those themes sort of made their way into what really became the consummate baseball song, which we're going to do for you here. Now, he was playing, this was in the spring of 1981, he was playing the Bogarts Club in Cincinnati. And then he was to drive to Chicago the next day, Sunday, and play Park West that night in Chicago, 1,000-seat venue. And he woke up early on Sunday morning in the motel in Cincinnati, and he had this song 4/5 done. It was in his head. It came to him in a dream, he said. And on the ride down to Chicago, he wrote the last part of the song, and he debuted it that night at Park West. And a couple days later, he went on radio and played it on the radio on the Roy Leonard Show and WGN, and the phones would not stop ringing. And people wanted to get that song. In those days, the way to do it was a record album, no CD, you put out an album. But Goodman had been cut loose by his second record label, Asylum. He had 5 albums on Asylum, and they were doing progressively worse. So he was on his own. Goodman was one of the first people to create his own record label, and he put out a single, a 45, with this song on it. And it's not just a baseball song, because Goodman, by this point, had been living for 12, 13 years with death sitting on his shoulder. He was diagnosed with leukemia in late '68. And when he was 20 years old, think back to when you were 20. Just think of what you were doing then. You probably didn't have a death sentence given to you. And in those days, the leukemia research was such that they were still doing experiments on dogs with bone marrow transplant. Today, it's much more common. He could have survived if the diagnosis had been much later, but he wasn't supposed to live a year, and he kept going. And if you listen to many of his songs, the theme of mortality is there. So he wrote a baseball song with mortality in it and put it out on his own record label, which he called Red Pajamas Records. And we're going to do it. Do you want to get us going here on the musical part of it? And you're going to have to suffer through my singing, but there's not a lot of singing in this song. It's mostly a talking song. And keep in mind that the Cubs were not successful like they have been recently. This is an affectionate Valentine to the Cubs. Okay, here we go. By the shores of Old Lake Michigan, where the hawk wind blows so cold, an old Cub fan lay dying And in his midnight hour, the toll, round his bed his friends had all gathered, for they knew his time was short. And on his head they placed a bright blue cap from his all-time favorite sport. And he said, "It's late, it's getting dark in here, and I know that it's time to go. But before I leave the lineup, folks, there's just one thing I gotta know. Do they still play the blues in Chicago when baseball season rolls around? When the snow melts away, do the Cubbies still play in their ivory-covered burial ground? When I was a boy, they were my pride and joy, but now they only bring fatigue to the home of the brave, the land of the free, and the doormat of the National League." Now he told his friends, you know, the law of averages says that anything will happen that can. That's what it says. The last time the Cubs won a National League pennant was the year we dropped a bomb on Japan. Well, the Cubs made me a criminal, took me down a wayward path and stole my youth from me. It's the truth. I'd forsake my teachers to go sit in the bleachers in flagrant truancy. And then one thing led to another, and soon I discovered alcohol, gambling, dope, football, hockey, lacrosse, tennis. But what do you expect when you take a young boy's hopes and then just crush them like so many paper beer cups, year after year after year, after year after year after year after year, until those hopes become like so much popcorn for the pigeons beneath the L-tracks to eat. He said, "I'll never get to Wrigley Field before my eternal rest. But if you have your pencils and your scorecards ready, I'll read you my last request. Give me a double-header funeral at Wrigley Field on some sunny Saturday, no lights. Have the organist play the national anthem, and then a little na-na-na, hey-hey-hey, goodbye. Have 6 bullpen pitchers carry my coffin in, and have 6 groundskeepers clear my path, and have the umpires bark me out at every base in all of their holy wrath. Oh, it's a beautiful day for a funeral. Hey, Ernie, let's play too. And somebody go back and get Jack Brickhouse and Leo DeRocher to come back and do just one more interview. Have all the Cubbies run right out into the middle of the field. Have Keith Moreland drop a routine fly. Give everybody 2 sacks of peanuts and a Frosty Malt, then I'll be ready to die. And build a bonfire on home plate out of your Louisville Slugger baseball bats and toss my coffin in. And let my ashes blow in the beautiful snow of the prevailing 35-mile-an-hour southwest winds. And as my final remains go wafting over the left field wall, we'll bid the bleacher bums adieu. And I will come to my final resting place out on Waveland Avenue. Well, the dying man's friends told him, "Stop it, cut it out, don't you know, that's an awful shame." But he whispered, "Don't cry, we'll meet by and by near the Heavenly Hall of Fame. You see, I've got season's tickets to watch the Angels now, so that's what I'm gonna do. But you here, the living, you're stuck with the Cubs, so it's me who feels sorry for you. So play that Lonesome Losers tune. Oh, that's the one I love the best." And he closed his eyes, and he slipped away. And Russ, it was the dying Cub fans' last request. Here it is. Still play the blues in Chicago when baseball season rolls around. When the snow melts away, the Cubbies still play in their ivy-covered burial ground. When I was a boy, they were my pride and joy, but now they only bring fatigue. To the home of the brave, the land of the free, and the doormats of the National League. Russ Locke, everybody. That's a long song. That's an endurance test. Now, isn't that just the best baseball song you've ever heard? It's got all the references of anybody who goes to a game, and you know it's about
drop a routine fly.
Yes, I've done that a few times, more than a few times. Oh boy, and everybody loved the song when he did it. You know, he was out on the road, working the road because he didn't have a record contract, and everybody loved everybody but the Chicago Cubs. Because they had a general manager named Dallas Green. Dallas Green, he was a longtime baseball guy, and he did not like this song. The Cubs had created a new slogan called "Winning, a New Tradition," and the doormat of the National League didn't really fit in that. And Goodman kept playing the song on the road, and come the fall of 1983, during the World Series, the NBC Today show decided they wanted to showcase this song on national TV. And so they asked if Goodman could come and play, and of course, in the World Series, the Cubs were not in the series. So Wrigley was empty. And they wanted to have Goodman come and play in Wrigley Field while the stadium was empty. And Dallas Green said, no, you can't do it. They banned him from the field to play that song. But NBC Today was craftier than that. They decided, if any of you have been to Chicago, you know that there are all these walk-up apartments that are ringing out the outfield area. And they go for big bucks today, those seats. But they went up on the top of one of the walk-ups outside of left field, and they had Goodman playing the song in the foreground, and the camera was up high, and Wrigley is in the background. So he didn't need the permission to get into Wrigley. And you can see this on YouTube today. Go there tomorrow morning if you like. It's one of his best performances of the song. So
The dying Cub fans' last request.
That's right. And by the way, throughout his career, up until the last couple of years when he was kind of outed after he was relapsed, he didn't, it was a secret that he had leukemia. A few friends knew, but it was not something that was generally known to the public. So he was not the dying man in the song to him. He said, that's some old guy. Anyway, come the spring of '84, and we're talking 6 months before Steve died, he had moved out to Seal Beach, but he kept coming back to Chicago for performances, and he was on WGN, which broadcasts the Cubs games. And he was being interviewed by Roy Leonard, and during the break, Dan Fabian, one of the station executives, came up to Steve during the break. He said, it's breaking my heart. You can't play your Cubs song at Wrigley. We dearly love you to play at Wrigley. Can you write us a song that you can play at Wrigley? And he got a gleam in his eye, and he said, yeah, and it'll be an anthem. And he came back here to Seal Beach, and a week later, he mailed him the song, and then he came out to Chicago and recorded it. And a couple months later, about 5 Cubs, I've got a picture of this in the book, are singing on the song, backup on the choruses. And this song was issued on a single. Remember, he had only his own record label, and this was a single that was released for charity. It was for the Children's Fund. And the song did so well that summer. If any of you are baseball fans, Chicago was just agog about the fact that the Cubs were leading the National League. They were going to the playoffs, and the better they got, the worse Steve got. In fact, they had plans for him to sing the national anthem at the playoff game, the first playoff game against the Padres, and 3 days before they clinched, he died. He died in Seattle, Washington, where I live. Last-ditch bone marrow transplant. And this song, ironically, was the best-selling song that summer of any record that he ever released in his whole life. Can you believe that? And it's a kind of a simple song. It's not a lyrically complex song. So there is some irony in the fact that for many people, not just in Chicago, but across the country, this is the song that they know Steve Goodman best for, you know? And we're gonna do it right here, and you all can sing it, but you also can help with the percussion. You all know what a Bo Diddley beat is? You know, it's... Yeah, keep going. And every other line of the song, you can do that, and it'll fit right in. Are you ready? Get ready to sing the chorus. Baseball season's underway. Better get ready for a brand new day. Hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today. We're singing now, go Cubs go, go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today. They got the power and they got the speed. Be the best in the National League. This is the year and the Cubs are real. So come on down to Wrigley Field. We're singing now, go Cubs go, go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today. Now this last verse is the verse where he kind of gets in a little commercial for the radio station, all right? Baseball time is here again. You can catch it all on WGN. So stamp your feet and clap your hands. Chicago's Cubs got the greatest fans. We're singing now, go Cubs go, go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today. One more time, go Cubs go, go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? Cubs are gonna, one last time, loud, go Cubs go, go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are gonna win today. Good job. Now this song has had a magic life of its own after Goodman's death. It was very popular that summer of '84, and then the Cubs, you know, in the next couple of years, they said, you know, we need a new theme song every year. In 1987, they had the Beach Boys did a song, Here Come the Cubs, and that ran for a while. And, you know, but these songs just didn't quite catch the way that Goodman's did. And then in 2007, that's the shirt I was wearing last night at the rehearsal. In 2007, the Cubs started ascending again. And WGN pulled out this song, and they used the song in what they call the bumpers in between their commercials and the broadcast, and they played it at the stadium. And by this time, the Cubs were starting to draw. You could not find a seat. The place would sell out, 40,000 people. And a tradition was born. Now, everybody here, raise your hand if you've been to a ball game. Any of you have been to a ball game? Been to a major league game?
Yes.
I mean, what happens at the end of a game? Any place you go, the game's over, you head out of the stadium, you head to your car. Not in Chicago. When the Cubs win, people stand at their seats, and for the next 3 minutes, the song is playing over the loudspeakers, and everybody's bellowing the song. It's been it'll send the hairs up the back of your neck to be there and sing with Steve when they win, and this has continued since 2007. And there still have been attempts to knock this song out and have another song be the Cubs theme song. Everybody here know Pearl Jam? Pearl Jam, everybody, I mean, it's a household name. Eddie Vedder, the lead singer of Pearl Jam, who lives in my neighborhood of West Seattle, he came up with a song about 3 years ago called All the Way. The Cubs are going all the way. The Cubs. And it was very popular, but it still didn't supplant Go Cubs Go. You know, Eddie is one of the biggest fans of the Cubs there is. You probably saw him on TV during some of the Cubs games a couple years ago, right behind the catcher in the stands. And they married him to Steve Goodman last month. There was a game in late June where you could buy a $150 ticket and you got a premium of a single. And Eddie Vedder's All the Way was on one side and Steve Goodman's Go Cubs Go was on the other side. And go on to eBay and Google that, you'll see those are going for more than $150 now. But something happened here. Now, this Dying Cub Fan song that we sang before, there was a problem developed here, real severe problem here, because the Cubs not only went to the World Series, but they won the World Series in 2016, right? So Goodman's song is no longer accurate. And what are you going to do about that? Steve's not around to rewrite it or even react to it. Of course, he would have been cheering them on. He was not rooting for them to fail to keep his song relevant. But I got a phone call after the Cubs won the World Series from a guy named Howard Fields in New York. He's the drummer for the Chapin family band. Anybody remember Harry Chapin and Tom Chapin? And he says, I got a new chorus for the Dying Cub Fan, and I want you to get it out there. So we're going to revisit this one more time, go back to the previous song. Can you start us off here? You ready? Will be no blues in Chicago when baseball season rolls around. When springtime is there, the Cubbies will wear the 2016 World Series crown. And now they are Chi-Town's pride and joy. The Cubbies played without fatigue in the home of the brave, the land of the free, as the champions of the Major League.
Yeah.
And that was an endurance test for everybody here. We're coming up on a break, aren't we, Russ?
Yes, we are. We're gonna take a little intermission, and we do have cake for happy birthday, and I think the cake is in the shape of a Cubs logo, like it's on your hat.
Yes. But Bob brought it in earlier, and the cardboard box was taped. I couldn't even peek.
That's definitely. Good job. Thank you.
Lemonade's real good.
Okay, that's okay. Good job. Thanks.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Steve. Happy birthday to you.
Bravo!
Yeah.
Steve Goodman. Small piece.
Thank you so much.
That's what I like to hear. Perfect.
Great job.
Thanks.
That's for you. You want that?
If you buy one of Clay's books tonight, nice lady named Carol Moss has some backpacks that go with them, and it fits right inside. And it's this neat little, oh, I have one, right there. So if you buy one of Clay's books tonight, you get to take home a nice little backpack. All the songs, so far everything we've done tonight has been written by Steve Goodman. But Steve Goodman also does songs by a guy named Michael Smith, and we've loved him forever. And we actually had a request for this song. Every time we've played here in the last 3 years, Bob, our wonderful, thank you, Bob, has asked us, are we going to do this song? So we We got it. On the last day of Pompeii, I thought I heard some poor boy say, oh wow, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done more, been more than I've been, had fun more, sinned more, mortal sin, oh wow, man, if I knew then what I know now, you know, I would have sent back that steak that was so overdone. Grab that big break while there was still time, time, time. Given some, made my life into a fantasy. Hot stuff for me to remember and remember. Now that I'm a goner, all that lava roughing round the corner, oh wow, man, I ain't complaining, only thinking out loud. All my life would be different, my love would be different if I knew then what I know now. And on the last day of Pompeii, I thought I heard some poor girl say, oh wow, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken up the slide trombone, had a garden and grew my own, oh wow, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken up that Mediterranean cruise. I would have filled up on chocolates and cigarettes and booze. Given some perfect stranger the blues. Hot stuff for me to remember and remember. When Vesuvio came to call, arrivederci, I've had a ball. Oh wow, man, I ain't complaining, only thinking out loud. All my life would be different, my love would be different if I knew then what I know now. My life would be different, my love would be different if I knew then what I know now. My life would be different, my wife would be different if I knew then what I know now. Woo!
Down.
Yeah. Bob Stane, that was for you.
I guess we woke him up.
The other songwriter that Steve introduced us to is somebody that you all know, except that you don't know him very much as a songwriter, except he did write a song about a boy named Sue. Didn't he? Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And he wrote some books. He wrote a book called Falling Up, and he wrote a book called Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Cover the
The
Rolling
Giving
Stone.
Cover the Rolling Stone, and he actually did get his picture on the cover. It wasn't Dr. Hook, it was actually Shel Silverstein. I have that Rolling Stone copy. Shel Silverstein wrote this song. We learned it from Steve Goodman, and here it goes. Is it here? Oh,
Yeah.
never mind.
He's having a good time. I think it's that cake.
Well, I'm French, you never guess it. So I might as well confess it, that I just met the sweetest woman my longest life. But a friend of mine said,
Buddy, just in case your mind is buddy.
don't you know that girl you're talking to is Peggy Johnson's wife? That man is big and ugly, scream and beg. He said, friend, for all your stealing, I won't bear you no hard feelings. I know Margie doesn't love me, but give me back my leg. Cause although the one you meant to take was wooden, in the dark there by mistake, you took the good one. I'm a three-legged man with a two-legged woman being chased around the country by one-legged fool. And he's a hopping and a flopping, and he shows no sign of stopping. And I tell you boys, this life, and I tell you boys, this life, and I tell you boys, this life is hard to grow.
Those are the songs that Steve Goodman taught us. And, you know, that's the kind of song you want to write. You know?
We want to bring up Paul Zolo. Paul Zolo is another old friend. We've bumped into each other for years and years. We've known each other from. Do we know each other from the Hole? Do you remember the Hole in Glendale?
Yeah, I'll go with that. The
Okay.
Hole.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Hole in
A lot of time
Glendale.
ago.
Right.
I was in the Hole yesterday.
No, they paved the hole and put up a parking lot.
But fantastic. Yeah, we're going to do another one by Michael Smith. You know, Steve Goodman, for a great songwriter, was unusually generous to great songwriters.
Yeah.
Usually you just sing your own songs. You know, when Chris Christopherson heard him in Chicago, he says, "You are great. I'm taking you to New York to get you a record contract." And Steve said, "You think I'm great? You got to hear my friend John Prine." That's unheard of in this business. Normally you step over your friends, you know, and someone says that. Steve also was great for Michael Smith, one of the great songwriters of all time. Wrote The Dutchman. And this song, Spoon River, I remember as a kid hearing Steve's version. It's like, boy, I didn't know songs could get that great. To me, it's a perfect song. So I'm so thrilled to play it with these guys. Aren't they great?
Yeah. Can I share it on Facebook?
Pardon me?
Can I share this?
Please. You don't have to ask. You just do that.
Some people don't like it.
I'm going to share this with my mother right now. She really likes this. Okay. I told her we're singing Steve Goodman. She goes, "Oh, you always liked him so much, didn't you?" You remember that. You guys ready? It's called Spoon River. All of the riverboat gamblers losing their share. All of the brave Union soldier boys sleep in the dirt. But you know and I know there never was reason to hurt. When all of our lives were entwined to begin with, here in Spoon River. All of the calico dresses, the gingham are up in the air with a grandfather's derringer cane. Words whispered down are a shadow in fade. The morning is heavy, one more beginning here in Spoon River. I like you right well. The Union's preserved. If you listen, you can hear all the bells. Words whisper down in the parlor. My rig is outside, coming around for the morning here in Spoon River. Did that verse right? Come to the dance, Mary Perkins. I like you right well. The Union's preserved, and if you listen, you can hear all the bells, all the bells. There must be a heaven down those I see mostly hell. My rig is outside, coming right through the morning here in Spoon River. My rig is outside, coming right through the morning here in Spoon River. Thank you. Michael Smith wrote that. And Steve's version is beautiful. If you haven't heard that, it's gorgeous. Well, I got to meet Steve because I grew up in Chicago, and he was one of our local heroes, him and John Prine. He had a club called Somebody Else's Troubles. And they had open mic there, and I would sing there on Monday nights if I... You remember that?
I don't remember that, but that's awesome.
Lincoln Avenue, yeah. Then it became Holstein's, but long before I could drink there. But Steve was very, not a tall guy, so when he would go behind the bar, you could barely see his head. It would just clear the bar. But it was like God was there because you didn't want Steve to hear your songs. Once he came to my high school and played, that was a thrill. I mean, for us, it was like the Beatles, you know, for Steve Goodman. And he played his folk thing. It was just, he was the greatest solo acoustic player ever. He was an amazing guitarist. He was hilarious. He was an amazing songwriter. And then after that, which I didn't know a folkie could do, he jammed on rock and roll with the rock band that was there. I never saw Pete Seeger ever do that. I didn't know a folkie could even do that. It was great. And then after that, as I went back and I said, excuse me, could you listen to one of my songs? And the guys in Chicago were nice. They all listened to my songs. And Steve listened. And my song didn't really make a lot of sense. It was kind of imitating like Beatles. But, you know, it rhymed and stuff. And Steve was, you know, he was nice. He said, he listened to it. He said, oh, that was good. I could have done the whole thing, though, in 2 lines. Which to me was brutal criticism, but I understood he was right, because it was maybe 2 lines of content. And I felt this is the major leagues now, and you know, it's like DiMaggio tells you something, you listen. So from that day on, I tried to write songs that made sense, you know, like a John Prine song. Steve Goodman, they were much better. So that was probably the best lesson I ever learned. And he was just the greatest. You know, he opened for Steve Martin when Steve Martin was doing those giant stadiums when he was a rock star comedian. Yeah. No one else could do that. He came out, Steve Goodman, solo, and charmed everyone. They loved him. You know, he would get encores there. And that thing where he changed the string, you know, he did that every time, you know, because that was so cool. He would somehow manage to always break the string because it was just so cool he could do that. So I'm thrilled. Anytime anyone even mentions his name, it makes me so happy. He was the greatest. So I want to thank these guys for doing it, you know, and waving the Steve Goodman flag, and you for having us on your show today. That was really great. And you guys for coming. So we're going to do a song. Now, Steve, he did all of Moby Dick, which, as you might know, is a very long book, in one song. The Moby Book, it's called. It's a blues. You know, please sing along. And you know, I was an English major at college, and they loved this song. I would sing this a lot. You know, do the Moby song. It was their favorite song. It's well done. Probably better than the book, I think. You guys ready? Where's my bass? There it is. Ishmael is my name. Call me Ishmael. Ishmael is my name. Served under Captain and sailed on bound and main. And while down there, said those men to respond that great white whale, we won't be headed home again. Took out a gold coin and nailed it to a tree. He said this coin belongs to the man who gets the whale, stole my head from me. 40 days, see, 40 days, 40 nights. So many whale, my boy, but I want one whale inside. You better look out home. Oh, that ship. Over the boat, over the side, it goes. Through that first harpoon, ain't happened with another. Starboard through the third, the boat capsized in the water. Now that great white whale's the biggest I ever did see, and I pray, oh Lord, would you stay with me? See, it's boiling, makes a mournful sound. Keep water's lost, many a man will drown, and black blood comes out that white whale. What's that I see? Yeah, bright in the wind's tail. Oh, yeah. Up on a British man of war, I prayed to the moon and stars I wasn't going to see no more. Call me Ishmael. Ishmael is my name. Served under Captain Ahab, out on the bound and main. Very much. Thank you. Thank you, Stevie.
Paul Zolo. And we're going to bring up Robert Morgan Fisher now, who is writing his screenplay. Written or writing? Are you still writing?
Right, done.
It's done. Of the book.
Oh, cool.
But he'll tell you all about it. Thank you. Robert Morgan.
Thank you, Russ. Good. How about some additional appreciation for Paul Zolo? And Herman Melville. Moby Dick is one of the greatest comic novels ever written. There's no question. You should read it from that point of view. Oh yeah, thank you, guitar. Real quick, the screenplay. Another reason to thank Paul Zollo is My Brother with Purpose. Is about 10, 11 years ago. He called me up and he said, "Hey, my friend Clay Eels has written this 800-page biography of Steve Goodman." And I said, "You are shitting me. 800 pages." And he goes, "No, it's really good." You know how Paul said, "It was really good." And so he says, we're doing a promotional tour of the Southland at this now defunct bookstore called Borders and Westwood Music and a few other places. And would you come do a couple of Steve Goodman songs? And I said, "Yeah." Oh, hell yeah. So I did a couple songs, and Clay and I got to know each other and bonded a little bit. And at the time I had some heat on myself as a screenwriter. I had scripts optioned at DreamWorks and Paramount and New Regency and stuff, and that's one thing I can do. I'm good at script writing. And he said, "I understand you're a screenwriter." He goes, "Well," and he hands me this doorstop of a book, and he says, "And this is a movie." And I go, "Well, I'll be the judge of that." So I read it, and I called him up and I said, "It is absolutely a movie." And I happened to be going up to Seattle to visit my parents in Anacortes, and I went to go camping with my son too on the 4th of July, sons, and so we arranged to meet at Cutter's Restaurant in Seattle, and to kind of seal the deal there for me to write the screenplay. So, here was this guy, Steve Goodman, who was diagnosed with leukemia and essayed a career as a folk rock star in the shadow of John Prine, largely, while volunteering for every crazy treatment that there was. If you get leukemia today, you will probably survive in part because of Steve Goodman. That's a really important part of the story. Well, I proceeded to do my process, and I highlighted and took notes and outlined and did all my front-end tools and work that I do, and I actually got through 30 pages of script. And then the economy went off a cliff in 2008, and I was really, and all my deals disappeared. And so I got really pissed off at the movie industry. There is no movie industry. And I retreated into my first love, which is fiction writing, short stories. I'm putting all my money in the short story, right? And get, and teach college. I teach creative writing at UCLA in Antioch. And so a couple years went by, and then a few years ago, like in 2015, this movie Love and Mercy came out. It's the biopic of Brian Wilson. Has anybody seen that? It's a terrific movie. It's extraordinary. It's more than a biopic. It had a profound influence on me. I remember we watched it on a cable on a Friday night, and Trophy Wife and I didn't have the usual Friday night fight. It was really good. And went to bed just really in a trance of nirvana. And that night, Steve Goodman came to me in a dream and said, "What about me?" That's it. And I woke up the next morning, and I pulled out the screenplay and looked at it, opened it up in my computer program, Movie Magic, and I looked at my notes and said, you have to decide if you're going to finish this, and would you finish it knowing it would never ever get made? And I said, yes, I would, because I owe it to Steve. Nobody is ever going to write a screenplay about Steve Goodman that I can imagine them doing that, and if they do, it won't be as good as the one I will write. So I finished it, and it's one of the best things I've ever written, and I collaborated with the wonderful Clay Eels, and it exists, and some of you here have read it, and you tell me that, both Clay and I, that you really like it, and that means a lot to me. So I'm going to do a couple of Steve Goodman songs. part of Steve's mythology, his legend. Whenever he would finish a song, he would call up John Prine. It'd be like 3 in the morning, you know. Prine, it's Goodman. I got one. He'd say, I got one. So one of these mornings, early morning calls, he called John and he said, I got one. It was kind of subdued. And this is the song that he sang to him over the phone. And I miss the old man tonight. Wish he was here with me, with his corny jokes and his cheap cigars. He could look you in the eye and sell you a car. That's not an easy thing to do. No one ever knew a more charming creature on this earth than my old man. He was a pilot in the big war, in the U.S. Army Air Corps, in a C-47 with a heavy load full of combat cargo for the Burma Road. And after they dropped the bomb, he came home and married Mom. Not long after that, he became my old man. And oh, the fights we had. When my brother and I got him mad, he'd get all boiled up and he'd start to shout, and I knew what was coming, so I tuned him out. Now the old man is gone, and I'd give all I own just to hear what he was saying when I wasn't listening to my old man. Miss the old man tonight. I can almost see his face. He was always trying to watch his weight, but his heart only made it to 58. For the first time since he died, late last night I cried. I was wondering when I was gonna do that for my old man. Story time. First time I met old Turnpike Tom, sitting at a diner in Bloomington. He said, "Are you going my way?" He had a sleeping bag and his hat was torn, and both his thumbs were 2 feet long from years of standing out there hitching on the highway. Calling, "Mister, won't you give me a ride?" high. So we finished the coffee, got in the car, got on the road and didn't go too far. But Tom began to tell me his sad story. Long about 1962, buddy, I robbed a bank in Kalamazoo just to get enough money to marry my true darling. But she died when she heard what I had done. Ever since then, I've been on the run, standing out there to the side of the highway calling, Mister, won't you give me a ride? I'm a wanted man, looking for a place to hide. Too old to run and I'm too sick to try. And soon I'll just be hitching on up to the Skyway. He said, I can't pay for the ride. Just once before I die, I'd like to do somebody a favor. And out of his pocket come a rusty old key, along with a map, and he gave it to me and he said, here's an end to all your labor. Way down in Greensboro, Tennessee, in the back of Rusty's roadside cabaret, there's 20,000 in unmarked green. The money I stole, that's in the machine, hangs in the back of Rusty's roadside men's room. I said, how stupid do you think I am? Later at Rusty's door, I drank a beer and then I drank 2 more. Then I headed for the treasure. And it was just like Turnpike Tom had said. That machine was under a sign they read, "Stop VD, prevent pregnancy. Ribbed for her pleasure. Sanitary. Reservoir tip. 3 for a quarter." So I took out the key and I broke the lock. And there to my bewilderment and shock, hung a sign that read, "You've just been had in a sanitary way by Turnpike Tom, the outlaw with the fastest sense of humor. And if you meet somebody with a troubled mind, just slip them the key and feed them the line. Tell them that their days will soon be better. Yes, and mister, you've been taken for a ride. There ain't nothing but fool's gold inside. Well, the real gold that's inside of us all. And remember that you only fall for lies and stories when you really want to, and that's the truth. Turnpike Tom. All right.
Robert Morgan Fisher.
Well, I think that covers all the songs, pretty much. I think they're great. We haven't forgotten anything, have we, Russ? Have we?
Isn't there one more?
Can anybody think of any song that we might have forgotten? It's just there's on the tip of my tongue.
That train song.
The train song, yeah. So,
anybody, actually, let's get Clay back up here because he's got some stories about this song.
It's story time again.
And anybody that wants to join in, we can talk about
yeah, this is an all-comer. So anybody who's been on stage, come on up. But you're not going to be playing for a few minutes. Do you? Is this the right mic for me, or is that?
Can I interject?
That's the one.
Yeah.
I just missed an important thing I meant to say, that we have the man who wrote maybe the greatest biography of a modern musician here, and he did it for Steve Goodman. And I'm so glad. Clay Yields, an amazing book, and it just gets better. So I had to mention that.
Thank you, Paul. I second that emotion.
Who here bought a Steve Goodman album back in the 70s when they came out? One of them was called Words We Can Dance To, one of his best. And this is one of the actual promotional t-shirts from 1976 that they handed out. Now that album had Steve on the cover of it in a tux and tails and a top hat. And so that's why this t-shirt is a faux tux. And of course, Words We Can Dance To comes from a song we're not doing tonight, Banana Republics, which is just the most delightful lyric in the song. Give me some words I can dance to and a melody that rhymes. And that kind of mixed up wordplay is Steve Goodman all over. And this has been such a wonderful evening. And what we want to leave you with is the song, but there's some context that you need to know about it. And I want to go back to the reason that we all know Steve Goodman, at least in the mainstream, and that is a man named Arlo Guthrie. Of all of the 1,100 people I interviewed for the book, my favorite interview was of Arlo. It was 2.5 hours at a Mexican restaurant in Louisville, Kentucky. I met him there on the way back from Florida. That's where he wanted to do the interview, and I go to his hotel, and he meets me in the lobby, and he says, well, my family's with me, and my heart sank. I thought, oh God, I'm going to be there with all of them. You know, I really just wanted one-on-one. He says, they're going to go to lunch separately, we're going to go together. And so Arlo's a tall guy, you know. And he climbs into my little rental car, and I said, where do you want to go? Do you know a place around here? He said, yeah, a couple miles down the road, there's a Mexican place, and they serve vegetarian. And I'm talking to him in the car as we're driving, but I didn't want to do the interview in the car and can't take notes and didn't want to turn on the tape recorder, so I was trying to make conversation. And I said, vegetarian, how long have you been a vegetarian? He said, oh, a couple of years. And I said, well, have you noticed any effects? And he said, yeah, people are less hostile to me. You know, I was looking for physical effects. Anyway, we got to the restaurant, and he was so gracious. I found out firsthand he's such an articulate guy in the moment. He comes off as this laid-back guy on stage, but he's very thoughtful and chooses words well. And he was willing to go with me to all kinds of detail that go beyond his stage story. And so after that interview was done, I knew in the back of my mind the book needed a foreword, and I wanted to have him write the foreword. But as it got closer and closer to the deadline, 2005, 2006, you know, I was starting to think, you know, do I want to ask him to write the foreword? I've got this great interview, and what I thought I would do is I would pull his own words out of the interview and put them together in a foreword. And it really worked out well, and I thought, gee, I'll just send it to him and he'll okay it. I sent it to him. I didn't hear a word. Email, phone call, I couldn't get anything back from him. Then finally it was the summer of 2006, and he was coming to Seattle for a show. And I thought, okay, I'll talk to him there after the show. He was playing Woodland Park Zoo, and he did. That night was the morning that I finally, after 6 years, got my interview on the phone with Hillary Clinton, high school classmate of Steve Goodman. And so I was kind of on a high that day, and I get to the end of the line where after the show where he's signing his CDs, and he looks at me, and I introduce myself again, and this was 6 years later, but he didn't recognize me. He didn't know me. It was like, and I know it was the end of the tour, and it felt like he just didn't care. And I was starting to get discouraged and wondering how I was going to, because I knew this had to be the foreword for the book. Finally, a friend of mine who helped out with the book immensely, John Epstein from Holyoke, Massachusetts, he said, you know, I've noticed on YouTube that his wife Jackie is posting videos. Why don't you ask her? I hadn't even thought of that. So it was on a Sunday night, and I write this email and I attach the forward, and and I sent it to her and I said, can you please talk to Arlo, see what you can do? And a half hour later, in my inbox, bing, and the subject line says, Arlo says yes. You know, it's the power of the spouse, I'll tell you. And there are spouses in the room here tonight. I want you to know it takes special help to do almost anything in this world. And before we do the song, which by the way is going to be the longest version of this song you've ever heard in your life, I want you to hear the forward. And these are Arlo's words. I didn't make these up. These are his words from the interview. I just rearranged them a little bit. And the thing you have to know about Arlo is that he and Steve had these things in common. Without Arlo, there wouldn't be a Steve in the nation's consciousness, essentially. You know, he brought Steve used to say, Arlo pays my rent. But conversely, it works as well. Because without Steve, there wouldn't be an Arlo in the mainstream. Of course, he was, you know, Alice's Restaurant in Woodstock, but he could not buy a concert in the South. He was a long-haired hippie. He was not legit. And he told me the only time he became legit was after City of New Orleans. And he said, I became a train guy. And there was another commonality. And they both had death on their shoulder. If you think about it, we've talked about Steve and his leukemia, but Arlo is the son of Woody Guthrie, who has a disease named after him. And it's a hereditary disease, Huntington's chorea disease, and he said, I figured I had about a 50-50 chance of getting that gene. And so they really had a kinship, and I just want you to hear these words. No one wants to believe consciously that they're going to have a short life. The most brilliant people in the world are going to deal with that kind of news or suspicion with some regret. It's just your body chemistry, the most basic part of being a human being. But at some point or another, I think everyone really knows, whether they want to know it or whether they have a chance to know it consciously or not. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you really do know how long it's going to take you to fulfill the mission of your life. And I felt that in Steve Goodman. I felt that he knew at some point, with a typical sadness that was not debilitating, that actually energized him in such a way that he could deal with things by writing songs that are deeper, or in some cases even funnier, than normal people would want to go. That kind of instinct opens up doors, and it allows you to be more real, because you got nothing to lose. I sense it in people like Goodman, who when you look into their eyes are just taking it all in. They aren't afraid of anything. They're fearless. That kind of living gives you abilities that most people are in fear of, because they recognize that those abilities come hand in hand with destiny. So most people will not take the abilities, even if you offered it to them. And you don't get that stuff generally until you're very old and you work through all the issues of life. I see it in a lot of older people. They're fearless. However, that fearlessness at the old age home is not the same as having it on stage when you're maybe 30-something or 20-something years old. And I met Steve Goodman maybe 4 or 5 times in my whole life face to face, but since the first day, I felt like I knew him. I felt like we were friends on a deeper level than just a passing chance meeting. I felt like I had a sort of kinship with him, and I know he felt the same way. I felt he had a real respect for me, and I had a tremendous respect for him. It was not a mutual admiration society, it was deeper than that. I'm sure he had that effect on other people because he was just that kind of guy. He was just a real guy. I like real people. And there was nothing phony about Steve Goodman. Felt very fortunate to have that to set the tone for the book. And what you're going to hear now is City of New Orleans. And of course, you're all going to be able to have the chance to sing on the chorus. But you're also going to learn a little bit about how this song came to be. So sit back. And these guys are going to undergo the ultimate endurance test. Because this was the story that Steve Goodman told most often when he was interviewed. He said it wasn't any big deal. You know, in the winter of 1970, he got married to his wife Nancy, and at that time she wanted him to meet her 93-year-old grandmother who lived downstate from Chicago in Mattoon. And so one morning, Monday morning, 8 o'clock, they get on the City of New Orleans train, and the two of them are sitting together in the train, and Nancy falls asleep, and Steve gets out a sketch pad, and he looks out the window, and he starts writing down the things that he sees out the window. And he says it wasn't any big deal, the muse just hit him. It took him maybe 40 minutes, and he had the song. Well, the nice thing about research is that you find out things that you didn't know. This was an apocryphal story. Goodman, we're gonna rewind about 4 years here. Goodman graduated high school in Chicago, and then he went to the University of Illinois down in Champaign-Urbana, further south than Mattoon. And at that time, the interstate highway system was not completely built. This is 1967, and so there would be side roads that you would have to drive to get there, and really the train was faster and much more popular. And so the students who came from Chicago, when they would go home for a weekend, or they would go for Thanksgiving or whatever, they would take the train, the Illinois Central line, up and down the spine of the state of Illinois. Now Steve, I came to find out, was a true genius in many ways, but as a college student, he was not real keen about attending class. He'd much be rather doing what these guys are doing on stage right now and play guitar rather than go to a classroom. And one day in his sophomore year, when he was coming back down to the University of Illinois from Chicago on the train, he told a friend of his, when they got to Champaign-Urbana, he said, "I'm not getting off. I want to go find out what New Orleans is all about." Because the train ran all the way down to New Orleans. And the friend said, "Wait a minute, you can't do that. You got a class this afternoon, you got one tomorrow." He says, "I've only got a couple of classes. I'll be back in a couple of days." So he rode all the way down to New Orleans, experienced that, hopped on the train, came north again to go back to school, and he fell asleep on the train. And as he woke up, he was kind of groggy, and he was looking out the window at one of the most beautiful scenes he's ever seen in his life. And it hits him then, the phrase, "Good morning, America." And I only know this because of following up interview leads, and one of them was one of Steve's high school classmates, Howard Primer, with whom they had a night at a Chicago bar a couple of weeks later, where Steve told Howard this story. And Howard and Steve sat in the back of the bar at a round table, and they were scribbling notes on a napkin, and that's where the phrase, "Don't you know me, I'm your native son," came from. So as any good songwriter does, he put that in his mental sketchbook, and 4 years later, when he's on the train with Nancy, he pulls that out and uses it as the core of the song that he wrote that day. And he was very, very excited about this song. He thought, you know, he had played so many other people's songs. Somebody told me that he had a phonographic memory. He could hear a song once and play it, but this was really his first serious entree into songwriting of his own. And he rushed back to Chicago, and the club that he played in Chicago, some of you may have remembered it or even gone to it, the Earl of Old Town was where his home was. And he rushes in there and he goes into the back room. The proprietor of that place called it the Star Cave. There's a deep freeze and some cases of food and liquor, and he's sitting on the table, and in walks another musician named Dyck and he says, "You got to hear this, I just wrote this song." And he starts to play it for him. And what he plays for him is what we now know as the chorus and the first verse and the third verse. Plays it all the way through, and he says, "What do you think?" And Dyck says, "Well, you know, it's a great train song. Lots of people write train songs. Gordon Lightfoot wrote Canadian Railroad Trilogy. And there are a lot of them out there, but why don't you pull a Steinbeck? Why don't you do what Steinbeck would do? Why don't you describe what happened on the train?" And so right then and there, for about 10 minutes, Steve sits down and sketches out the phrases that we know best, the ones that put pictures in our mind. Steve used to say, you know, I can't make stuff up as a songwriter. I kind of have to see it first. And so these images of sleeping babies and pass the paper bag, that's the second verse that we're about to sing when it comes back around on the guitar.
Dealing card games with the old man in a glove guard. Penny a point, there ain't no one keeping score. Say, won't you pass the paper bag that holds the bottle? Feel the wheels rumbling beneath the floor. And the sons of Pullman porters, sons of engineers, ride their father's magic carpet made of steel. Mothers with their babes asleep, rocking to the gentle beat, and the rhythm of the rails is all they feel. Just singing, "Good morning, America, how are you?" Said, "Don't you know me, I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the city of New Orleans. I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done."
I was watching you out there during the verse. This kind of funny thing was going on because some of the words that were on your lips were not the same as some of the words that were on Robert's lips here. And that's okay, because the version of this song that we know the best comes from Arlo Guthrie. And he made a few changes to the words. He took steam and green and changed them to steel and feel. And he made a few other minor changes to the song, but kept the spirit of the song. Now Arlo learned the song, you know, back in the day when clubs like this were going, in the Ice House, people who were performers would come and they would play for a whole week. not just one night. And Arlo came to Chicago to play at an upstairs club called The Quiet Night. And near the end of his run there, and 3 shows a night, that night, Steve took his wife Nancy on their first wedding anniversary to see Arlo perform. And the proprietor of that club, Richard Harding, had known Steve and had known the song City of New Orleans. It had gotten some local radio play and Steve was performing it. Others in Chicago were performing it. But it certainly wasn't national. And here's Arlo Guthrie, and Richard Harding pulls Arlo into the back room and pulls Steve into the back room, shuts the door, and people even outside of the room could hear this. It was so loud. Richard Harding's telling Steve, "Play him the train song. Play him the goddamn train song." And Steve was not a shy guy, but you know, he realizes that he's being put up to this. This isn't coming from Arlo. And you know, Arlo told me, you know, there are guys everywhere you go who want to play you their song. He says, in his stage show, Arlo says, you know, there are little guys everywhere, and I hate songs. I even hate my own songs. But Arlo told me that in my stage pattern, I probably make myself out to be more of a butthead than I really was that night. In fact, Arlo sat back and he turned to Steve and he said, "All right, Steve, you buy me a beer, and as long as that beer lasts, you can do anything you want." And as Arlo says, if you've ever seen him in concert, he said it 1,000 times if he said it once. That was one of the finer beers of my life. Now, after he heard the song, Steve gave him a lead sheet and a tape, and Arlo took it home to his home in Massachusetts, put it on the piano, and didn't do anything with it for about 6 months. Then he started to work on it and to prepare to record it himself. And then, as we all know, I mean, if you were around in the summer and fall of 1972, City of New Orleans was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. You couldn't, it was inescapable. It was a delight. And it was one of those hits that the record company didn't force on the public. It grew from the ground up, particularly in the South. Radio stations started playing it, and the official record is that it rose to number 18 on the charts. But it certainly got played a whole lot more than that number represents. So most of us think, well, Steve did City of New Orleans, he got his record contract, and his version came out in the fall of '71. And then Arlo's version comes out in the summer of '72, and that's how the song got its life. But there's a critical chapter that most people don't know that happened in between. And it involves a little-known folk singer named Harry James Deutschendorf, better known as John Denver. Now, if you go back to 1971, when Arlo is learning City of New Orleans, what's the #1 hit on the radio? It's John Denver's first hit under his own doing, and that is Take Me Home, Country Roads. And his manager told me that John was thinking, once you get a #1 hit, you want another, and then another, and another. And so he was looking for a hit. And it happened to be right here in Los Angeles. You know, if you've seen the movie Almost Famous, they sort of lifted up the Continental Hyatt House as a national household word now. But at that time, that's where the musicians came through. And Arlo and John met at the Continental Hyatt House. And Arlo said, look, I just heard this song, and I want to play it for you because I think it could be good for you, but I don't want you to record it yet, because I'm going to do it. Well, he played it for John, and John couldn't resist. And he's going back to New York to record his next album, and he calls up Steve. And he says, Steve, I want to record your song. And I want to make a few changes in it. I want it to sound a little more like me. So you're Steve Goodman, and you're going back and forth between Chicago and New York to get your cancer treatments. John Denver, the #1 hit maker in the country, is calling you to have a meeting with you. What are you going to do? He said, sure. So we went back east, and they met up in a hotel room. And the reason I know what happened in that hotel room is that there was a third person there. It was John Denver's guitarist, Mike Taylor. And John said, here are the changes I want to make to the song. He said, they're just a few little changes. Now you tell me if these were just little changes. He changed old black men to old gray men. He changed Good Morning America, how are you? To Good Morning America, I love you. And he jettisoned the whole third verse, the one with the punchline, the disappearing railroad blues, and instead wrote in a bridge. You know, the days are full of empty, the nights are full of dreams. John Denver turned it into City of New Orleans Light. Now again, you're Steve Goodman. You're just a couple, 3 years after being told you're going to die soon, and music is your life. And here's John Denver going to do your song. Would you agree to that? Goodman felt he had no choice, so he went ahead. His album came out a couple months later, and then a couple months after that, in January of '72, John Denver's album comes out, the follow-up to the one with Take Me Home Country Roads. And you may remember the album. It showed John in a silhouette, and he's holding an eagle on his arm, and it's called Irie. Steve picks up the album, looks at it, flips it over, and it says, City of New Orleans by Steve Goodman and John Denver. Steve was livid. He didn't know that this was going to be about royalties and songwriting credit. But you know, the person who was even angrier than Steve was Arlo Guthrie. And it wasn't because Arlo felt that the rug was being pulled out from under his recording. Arlo told me this thing of stealing credit or taking credit was something you didn't do in folk music. He said he knew it was common in pop music. In fact, his dad, Woody's manager, once got a call from the manager of Elvis Presley saying that Elvis wants to record This Land Is Your Land, but he wants half the songwriting credit. And of course, Woody's manager said no, but he said he knew that happened all the time, but it was wrong. It was wrong for that to happen in folk music. He said, you know, our generation did a lot of things. Our generation stopped nuclear power, it stopped the war, it raised up people's rights. But one thing we didn't do is we didn't get rid of all the thieves of the heart. And Arlo was just livid. Well, Arlo told me, I was mad. I was so mad with letters that aren't even in the alphabet. I was so mad. And he was yelling at his wife, saying this is wrong. Denver shouldn't have done that. And Jackie told him, I get it. I agree with you, but don't yell at me. Go talk to John Denver. So about a year later, he meets up with John Denver, just a little bit up the road from here in San Francisco, at the home of Werner Erhard, at an S seminar. And Arlo walks in, and he goes upstairs and he finds John Denver sitting behind a desk in a room up there on the second floor. And he starts reading him the riot act. He says, you can't do this. It's wrong to do it. The guy's got a family. He's sick. You can't do this. And John held up his hands and he said, Arlo, let's be friends. I'm going to make this right. Well, John did end up making it right, but many, many years later, long after Goodman died, about 13 years afterward, in the fall of '97, John Denver recorded a children's album of train songs. It's called All Aboard. It's a wonderful CD. And he re-recorded recorded City of New Orleans in the Steve and Arlo fashion. But this is kind of a bittersweet ending because a month later, John Denver crashed his plane and died. And so City of New Orleans became the last track on the last album that John Denver ever recorded, and he did it right. Well, I'm sure that we're all glad that the version of City of New Orleans that caught on was the one that Arlo did and not the one that John Denver did. Arlo's version influenced all of the other versions. Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson made it a #1 hit in 1984. And more than 100 artists have recorded it, and people play it every day all around the country. And one of the best parts of the song is the last verse with the punchline of the Disappearing Railroad Blues. It's what really elevates the song from being about a train to about the mortality of an era and the mortality of all of us. And we're all going to be able to hear and sing this verse as soon as it comes around again on the guitar.
On the city of New Orleans, changing cars in Memphis, Tennessee. Halfway home, will you there by morning? Through the Mississippi darkness, rolling down to the sea. And all the towns and people seem to be into a bad dream, and still rail still ain't heard the news. The conductor sings this song again, the passengers please refrain. This train got to disappear in the railroad blues. Just singing good morning America, how are you? Said, don't you know me, I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the City of New Orleans. I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. Good morning, America, how are you? Say, don't you know me, I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the City of New Orleans. I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Clay, Robert, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank the band. These guys are worn out, man.
And thank you for hanging in there for this
Okay.
amazing history lesson, and a salute to one of the greatest songwriters that ever lived and a great human being. And speaking of great human beings, thank you, Clay Heels,
Thank you.
for writing this masterpiece of a book that is continually
Book is for sale out in
updated.
the hallway, by the way. Book is for sale in the hallway.
I'll hang around and inscribe it to whoever you want. And remember the backpacks. You don't have to lug it home in your arms.